All right. Well, hey, everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod. Absolutely thrilled to have one of our favorite college basketball analysts back for his third appearance, Robbie Hummel. Thanks for coming back on the show.
No, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I hope you guys had a good summer.
Absolutely. Although it's been, for us, it's been very well. I mean, for you too, it's been real dry, just kind of a weird summer. I mean, summer's extended all the way into October. This is super strange,
Yeah.
but it's Midwest, right?
Yeah, it was like 87 degrees in Chicago last weekend. It was really hot. So it'll probably snow in like a week, right? Like
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah,
what we're used to.
for sure. Yeah.
So.
Well, for those of you who don't know, Robbie Hummel, of course, former three-time All Big Ten player, All Freshman team in 2008, two-time AP honorable mention All-American, played for the Timberwolves, FIBA 3x3 gold medalist in 2019, and is seemingly on television every night during the college basketball season for hosts and networks. So we are live. So I will attempt to monitor the chat. So if people want to leave comments or questions or things like that, I will try and watch, and we'll see if I can keep up with it. All right. So I'll have Rod's going to get us going here.
So speaking of the being on TV every night, did I correctly see this summer that you're going to be doing NBA games now?
Yeah. So I will do a good amount of NBA for NBC, mostly Monday nights. I was actually at the seminar in Stamford, Connecticut, where the NBC Sports headquarters is. It's an old Herbal Essence shampoo factory that they've made into a massive TV. That's where Sunday Night Football does their studio. Golf Channel's up there. I did the Olympics. Let's see, that was last summer now. Not this summer, but last summer. And other than like a handful of people, such as Mike Tirico, anyone doing USA basketball, men's or women's, swimming and diving, gymnastics, and track and field, everybody was in Stanford. So I did all the non-US games, which was awesome. But I did them at like 4 a.m. via Stanford, not Paris. But there was like 1,700 people in Stamford, Connecticut doing the Olympics. It was other than the guys I mentioned, and then like Mike Tirico and maybe Ahmed Fareed and a couple of the studio hosts, everybody else was in Connecticut. But you really wouldn't have known, which is bad for people in TV and good for TV networks because they don't have to pay. Like the viewer doesn't know. So
absolutely. But and I didn't know it was quite that widespread. I knew they were doing a lot of that. But I gotta think, I mean, yeah, you're right. People won't notice necessarily, but that just can't be quite as good an experience.
No.
For the broadcast, because you're not there, you're not able to talk to anybody directly.
There's a couple places where you struggle. Any officiating aspect of like needing an explanation, you never will get it.
Right.
Seeing like there's times where I like, and Tom Izzo is a great example of this. I like when somebody takes a bad shot to look at the bench. Because with coaches, so he'll be firing guys to the scores table and like his reactions and like that's valuable. You don't get that. It was funny. I was essentially, and I saw it when we took some photos in this room for the seminar, but there at NBC, they have like 40 little pods that look like saunas, and I have photos on my phone. It's actually almost funny. It looks like old saunas that they've converted to these like TV pods, and everybody had their own. So like volleyball was next to us, and then Bob Fitzgerald did the Warriors games and me and myself, and then Mike Breen's stat guy, Dave Freed. We were all just sitting in this like little room with like 4 monitors, and across the way was another sport like water polo or whatever, right? So, but I was out there for this seminar, and it was I'm a big 90s NBA fan because I grew up in Valparaiso. My dad worked in Chicago. It's 50 minutes to the city with no traffic. We're on Central Time. There's a lot of people that commute to the city from North Indiana. So like I'm a big 90s NBA fan. And I find myself at this seminar, and it's like, well, Grant Hill is here, Reggie Miller is here, Tracy McGrady is here, Vince Carter is here. It's like, whoa. Just in terms of there's some big time people that I grew up watching. I think it's different if you're around people that you played against, I played against
Sure.
Carmelo Anthony, I played against LeBron James in games, and those guys are awesome. Don't get me wrong. They're incredibly accomplished, but I think you look at the people from when you were a kid, and I'm obviously a big Jordan fan because of being a Bulls fan, but Reggie Miller is one of his nemesis, right? He's a guy that really challenged Michael. So just to be around some of those older guys, to be around a guy like Grant Hill, and I've been around Grant and Reggie a little more than the other two because they're in TV doing the NCAA tournament and stuff. But it was a really cool experience, and I'm honored to get to do some NBA because, say what you want about the NBA, the shots go in. Those dudes are so talented. It's insane.
No, do you get that kind of nostalgic feeling? Are they bringing the John Tesh song back?
Oh yeah, it'll be back, which is good. It's an iconic song. It's an iconic sports song.
I have to say, personally, as a Pistons fan, I don't associate positive memories with that thing because when NBC got the contract, that's
right.
when
Things went south.
Got old. They got old. Jordan finally, after years of getting beaten over and over and over, finally broke through.
Yes.
But yeah, I get it. That's great. Speaking a little bit more about the NBA thing, though, was this something that since you had gotten into broadcasting, you had aspired to, or did just the opportunity come up, maybe as a result of the Olympics or other things?
Yeah, the Olympics definitely made this possible, doing those. I love the NBA, and I have since I was a kid. And I've filled in for the Bulls. When Stacey King has been, whether he's sick or going on vacation or whatever he's had, when he's not been able to do it, the Bulls have been really kind about asking me to do the games. And the same for Bill Wennington because he does their radio. Right. So I bet I've done probably 15 to 18 Bulls games over the last 3 or 4 years of just filling in at random times. And, it's always, I love doing it. I filled in for a Bulls Lakers game where it's LeBron, Carmelo, Russell Westbrook. I know Russ wasn't probably what he had been, but still when the Lakers come to town, that's a big deal anywhere. So it wasn't necessarily a goal, I would say, but when I was at ESPN, I tried like crazy to do any NBA summer league. Cause I had been a 2nd round pick and I knew the experience of going to summer league and thinking, dude, I'd have to make this team. I have to play well. I've had that experience in my 2 times of going to play summer league. I couldn't get in there. I told him I'll take any NBA radio, anything. And it was crickets. So I get it. They had their guys that they'd been using, and I totally understand. But this definitely kind of came along with the Olympics. And I think I've probably established myself career-wise much more now than I had when I was at ESPN. So I think that helps as well. But, Sam Flood is the president of NBC Sports, and he's been great. I so appreciate, him allowing me to do this, to do both Peacock's Big Ten games and some of the NBA for NBC stuff.
Now, are you also doing you had done Fox and BTN. Yeah. Are you still working?
So I am leaving Fox and I'm going to CBS. Which should be a great thing. And I will still do a few Big Ten Network games. I don't know how many. I'll do a little bit at the Big Ten tournament for them and maybe a handful in November and December. And because CBS is partnered with Turner and I've done the NCAA tournament for CBS Turner, I'll do a few Turner, like the Players Era and some of those games. So, this is a big shakeup.
Are you still doing Big Ten games for CBS, though?
I would assume mostly, I think with CBS, Bill Raftery takes whatever game he wants, and rightfully so. And I will go wherever he does not want to go.
Wow,
I'm honored to be that guy.
So
I think it will be some, obviously Steve Lapis does some CBS too. I assume it will just it could be some Big 12, some Big East. I don't think they don't get SEC anymore. I think that was in the last TV
That's
deal.
ESPN now. Yeah.
That's all ESPN. So, I think it'll be a mixture of those 3 leagues, but I think mostly their content is heavy Big Ten, CBS.
I associate it with Sunday afternoon games.
Agreed.
So, you're working with all these networks. You must work with a lot of different people, right? You don't have the same team that you're with as far as play-by-play. You've been doing this a while, so I imagine you're, better at it, at least more fluid. How is it working with just different people all the time? I mean, because there definitely is a timing issue, like when you talk, when you don't talk, and right.
Sure.
How do you navigate that throughout the season?
Yeah, it helps to have chemistry, to be around each other. And one of the things, that I think will be good about doing this year, and you guys made the joke that I was on TV every night, which it felt like I was. I don't think that will be as big of a problem, just in the sense of I think the number will be closer to 65 rather than 85. Which is I might even be bored. It'll feel like I'm not even working hard.
Maybe outside Big Ten Network. Can I come into the studio for tonight?
That's right. I've been sitting on my couch the last 2 nights. I don't know what to do with myself. But also, I felt like I did get the feeling of some things before I get to your question about the play-by-play guys that I was kind of burning certain fan bases out because I was at BTN and Fox and Peacock. I could get like 10 Purdue games in a row or 8 Michigan State games in a row or I had like 8 Indiana games in a row last year. And especially when they're not playing well and you're just saying the same things, it might even be factual, but that's not what the fans want to hear from the same person. And especially from an Indiana perspective, from a Purdue grad.
So, really, they have a problem with that?
and maybe Michigan State too. Illinois, same thing. So I think that this kind of solves a little bit of that. I don't think there will be nearly the same level of inundation of me to some of these fan bases. As for working with partners, certainly doing stuff outside of the broadcast, I think really helps, and just to kind of get to know them and understand their style. But just it really is, the more you work together, the more you can kind of develop an understanding of what is their cadence, how do they like to talk, how do they finish things. There are some guys, when you start working for them, they can kind of trick you. You think they're done and they're not, and then you sound like you're talking over each other, and that will happen some because it's impossible for it not to. But I'm so fortunate. I think about the guys that I worked with the most last year. It'd be Kevin Kugler, total pro; Brandon Gaudin, total pro; Jason Benetti, total pro. Like those are really the 3 guys that I had the most. And there'll be some change with going over to CBS. I'll see some different guys, whether it's Harlan, Spiro, maybe Ian, Andrew Catalan, but those are 4 pretty good options. I don't think you complain about working with any of those guys.
Well, and I suppose there's just used to having people and for them it's the same thing, right? And they're the ones who are sort of controlling the conversation, right? Ultimately, and if they've been doing it so long, I'm sure they're used to having people. They're used to like helping you out. I mean, I guess.
Yeah, and I think those guys get a good understanding too of their analysts and how kind of the cadence that their partners speak with. Same as what we do with play-by-play guys. They understand that, like, I think Bill Raftery sometimes can trick his play-by-play partners because he seems like he's done, but then he has something else that's really good to say. So I know for a fact that some of those guys have said, you've got to really know he's done because he might still have a little bit more, which, he has good stuff to say.
So, one thing I noticed with you over other analysts, especially with the last couple of years of Michigan State, you had a much better sense of what was going on with Michigan State. Now, I know you said occasionally listen to the show. I'm sure that's not where you're getting most of your information, but when it comes to research, I feel like you do more research because you seem to have, like, other people had sort of, this Michigan State was always a great rebounding team. And they'd always say that during the game. I'm like, they haven't been rebounding well for 2 years. So I don't know what these guys are talking about.
It was a myth of what they had been, right?
Right. What they had been. And people kind of like live in the past and stuff. And now I don't feel like you fell into that trap. Are you crushing tape? What are you doing to prepare for all these games? I mean, obviously not doing as many games this year, but you're still gonna be doing a lot.
Yeah, sure. I think part of it goes I feel like I felt the total capacity of Michigan State's elite rebounding from 2007 to 12, where you're seeing some teams that really will embarrass you rebounding. And then I just, the only thing that I could say is I watch the games. I watch a lot of Michigan State and I watch a lot of everybody that I'm, doing, but it didn't look the same. Nor did their transition game post Cassius Winston. I think that they talk, and Coach Izzo was not bashful about talking about, we want to rebound, we want to run, they're staples of our program. But he wasn't, he's never been shy about saying when he's not happy with them in the way that they've done those 2 things. So I just think it's kind of an eye test, honestly, and in terms of watching tape, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Synergy. Synergy is okay. So Synergy is this program. Every college in America uses it. Every NBA team uses it. It is an incredible tool in terms of, I keep a notebook of personnel of how these, let's say when I have Michigan State, the first time I'll watch 50 to 75 to even 100 for the best player clips of how that guy scores. And you would be shocked at the patterns that you will find of how good, and NBA even, maybe not the elite guys, but the role dudes for sure. You see a pattern of how these guys want to score. So there's only been a handful of players where I've ever had to go back. Malachi Branham is one. I had to go back. I saw him in December or like November or early December. And after like January 3rd, he was a totally different player and then became a lottery pick. But there's not many guys like that. Once you've kind of like made your scouting report, that thing is pretty accurate, I found. But then like Synergy, it clips the games. You can watch them. And, if a game is 40 minutes, as long as you're paying attention, having to rewind, probably like 45, it really does, maybe even less. It cuts out all the stoppages. You don't have to watch the free throws. So that thing has made my life so much easier. Do you think about how you would have to do this in the 80s or 90s, like actually getting VHS tapes like that? It would be impossible, So that thing has been a lifesaver. And just I think the best way to prepare is to watch the games because then what's going on.
Well, in the 80s, they weren't on a TV at all.
That's true. But that's for talking to the coaches. Going to shoot around would have been like the biggest thing. And still, you can get good stuff, but then it would have been. I
just can't also imagine being there calling a game when you're not at the arena, especially college basketball. I feel like there's so much when it comes to the crowd and.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, post-COVID, they got rid of that stuff. I used to have a kid at my house where I could call games from here. And that was like, I actually was calling a game upstairs. It was an American Conference game. And my roof started leaking during the game. We had like 2 feet of snow. I got one of those like ice dams. So water was like running into my living room as I was announcing the game. And I can tell you my give a shit ratio of the game went down really fast.
Well,
it was weird.
That reminds me, of course, that if you have problems with leaky roofs or you make sure your gutters work properly, contact the Brothers Just Do Gutters if you're in West Side, East Side of Michigan. Obviously, Robbie, not being in Michigan, can't operate. You can't use them, but utilize your services. They also have things that melt the ice dams on your roof, so you don't get the buildup on the side too. Super handy. 10% off. You mentioned Final Four. You can find that at the Final Fours on the schedule.com/support.
Eric, you could work in TV. You could definitely. If I saw that, man, look at that transition.
He is a master of the segue. It's great. And it's like that. He has no idea you're going to be talking about a leaky roof. But
That's
boy,
right.
that moment comes along and you have to seize the opportunity.
Got to jump on it.
Absolutely.
So turning to the Big Ten, we're getting close to ending our season preview of everybody, and I'm of the opinion that the league is very, very difficult to project this year, except for one thing. Your old school is the overwhelming favorite to win it. That's how I see it. I don't see a close second, at least on paper.
Yeah.
How good do you expect this team to be? And then do you think it has a chance to be better even than the recent teams that featured Zach Edey?
Yeah, I do. Their depth is crazy. I went to a practice because I went to the USC Purdue football game a couple of weeks ago, and they were practicing in the morning. And just to stop in, what was really stood out to me was apparent. Obviously their talent is great with Braden and Fletcher and Trey Coffin-Wren, but their depth is like they legitimately have 12 really good players.
Yeah.
They're really high on this Antoine West kid who's a freshman. He might redshirt because I just don't know where he plays, right? But that was, when I was at Purdue, we had good teams, but we went 7 or 8 deep. And like once we got past that, the fall off was pretty apparent and substantial. They have a ton of depth, and I think some of their newcomers. They're really high on Oscar Clough and the way that he rebounds the ball. That will help their defense immensely. They were horrible on the defensive glass last year. Once Daniel Jacobson went down, he's healthy. He played USA basketball for I believe the U19 team this summer.
Yep.
They have so many good players. And, then you add in the fact that Braden Smith is the best point guard in the country, and Fletcher Lawyer has just been a big shot maker throughout his career. And Trey Kaufman-Wren last year is as improved as anybody, and they're all back. And plus throw in the fact that cohesion just does not exist. And they, for the most part, kept probably, I'm sure they would have liked to have kept Cam Heide or Miles Cole, but they keep most of the guys they wanted to. So that's rare these days. I agree with you. I think they're the overwhelming favorite. And just because of everything they bring back, the talent level they have, and then just some of the infusion of new blood. And I wouldn't sleep on CJ Cox or Jakari Harris either. Those guys had some really big moments as freshmen, and they get a year older, a year more mature, and they're still playing off, the best point guard in college basketball.
You look at CJ Cox's shooting numbers last year, and I knew he had played a role for them, during the course of the season. But then you look back at what he did. It's like this kid I think he shot 40%.
Yeah, and had some big games against good people.
Yeah, and that wasn't supposed to be his thing, as I understood coming in. So I'm curious. Is the Israeli kid, is his name Mayer?
I think it's Omer Mayer. Yes, I believe that's right. I got to get my pronunciation. I'm not there.
Did you see him? Because this is what I thought. I don't know how you saw last season, but everybody knows how great Braden Smith was. But I did think Purdue had to put so much on him last year that when they hit that rough stretch, especially late in games, when he was maybe playing minute number 36, he didn't look as good to me, and I thought it cost them. If this guy is as good as I've heard he may be, to me, that might be the biggest, or one of the biggest differences of all with that team, if they can just take a little bit off of Braden Smith's shoulders. Did you see anything suggesting that's probably going to happen?
I agree that he would definitely get fatigued at the end of some of those games. How could you not? The ball's in your hand. It's exhausting to bring it up. You got somebody hawking you, and your usage is insane. And then you're right. You're in minute 36, 37. You're out of gas. So, Omer, from watching some of the FIBA games that he played in U19 and U20 for Israel, he had some impressive, from a shot making and just playmaking perspective. I saw him at the Nike Hoop Summit. I did that game for NBC, and he had 4 or 5 assists, and he's actually built like Chris Kramer from a body standpoint. He doesn't. I'm not saying that he guards like him.
No, but just physically.
Physically, he's a big guard, and he can pass. He can make shots. He can make a pull up. It'll be interesting to see. We see it with Americans that go over to Europe and play as a rookie. It's a big adjustment. So for him, I know he's played for Maccabi. Last year he played some for their actual senior team, which it's crazy that we have senior pros that now just play. I don't know. I can't wait till an NBA guy that like a J.R. Smith. It's like, you know what? I think I want to play.
We're getting close. We
are getting close.
Decision where a guy played in the B League.
I know. It's so wild. But I agree with you 100% on the Braden Smith fatigue thing. And if they can just spell him for 7 or 8 or 9 minutes a game, that would be huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so kind of along those lines, you look at Purdue now, Michigan State, the last 3 years, we've had 2 teams that have won the Big Ten running away by 3 games, which is, I don't know how often that happens. I don't think it happens very often that the Big Ten has won, at least the regular season, won that easily by a team.
Right.
And those teams are sort of built differently. Like you mentioned, you have relative continuity with those 2 teams. Do you think that plays some into the fact that they're able to be more successful than more transfer heavy programs like an Illinois or Michigan or something like that?
Well, I just think you're not starting from ground zero. Brad Underwood has done a great job of getting those guys to play together, but think about where he started the last 2 years. It's a totally new team. This year, you got Kylan Boswell coming back, Ben Humrickhouse, and then it's like, I guess, Ivisic, but the rest of those guys are all new. And I think Illinois will be fascinating because of the fact that you have a bunch of guys that are in the United States for the first time in their lives, not Big Z, but the other 2 guys for sure. I think continuity is huge. I think being able to have a core And Michigan State certainly has that. I think there's some question marks as to their half-court offense. But I do think that when you look at everything that's back, the front court they have, you've got a point guard that's been healthy this summer in Jeremy Fears. Continuity is, it's really all we have to go off of. Like, there's so many teams you're just like, I don't know. Like USC, I don't know. Washington, I don't know. They're talented. They got a lot of talented players. Even Michigan. Michigan is a kind of a wait and see, just in the sense of, yes, they have a lot of talent, but how does that fit together? And Dusty May made it work last year with the Twin Towers. Will we see the Triple Towers this year? I don't know. Maybe, like there's nothing to go off of. So that's what makes this so difficult.
Yeah, it just seems to me, you look at Purdue 3 years ago, win it going away. Purdue the year after that, win it going away. Michigan State last year, wins it going away. There's a pretty obvious pattern there because they're the only two programs in the league that really function that way or have been in this era. I don't think you can say it's an accident.
No, I totally agree. I totally agree with you that the more guys you can retain just because of the familiarity, the place you're starting at when you start practice is obviously a different place if you've got 8 guys back. There's just no substitute for the knowledge you carry over from season to season, the comfort level, the trust in your teammates, all that stuff plays into that. And I agree with you that there is no coincidence that Purdue and Michigan State have been the most successful over the last 3 years.
So after 1 year that we've had the 4 West Coast schools as part of the league, I'll preface this by saying I was watching some of Big Ten Media Day today, and just from afar, I really like Mick Cronin because I think he's 100% honest. There's no hiding what that guy thinks. And he said it during the season, and then they asked him again today, and he handled it in good humor, but I think he's 100% right. He was talking honestly about the fact that those schools are facing a travel issue that the rest of the conference schools don't face. And to me, my take is, I think the only way any of those schools are going to win a Big Ten title is if they are overwhelmingly better than everybody else, just because you start every year behind the 8 ball. But I'm curious from your perspective, what your take is on that, now having seen it for a year, on how the addition of those schools has played out both for them and for the league. And do you agree with me that the travel requirement just puts them behind the 8 ball from jump?
Yeah, to start, the travel requirement certainly does. There's no doubt. Just in watching the way that those teams look when they get back from those types of trips, or even when they get out there, there's some sluggish performances. I don't know if proven is the right word, but I think we have enough of a sample size of watching some of those games look like slogs to say, all right, they're dealing with something that our other teams, because they don't have the trips, just aren't. Now, with that being said, this was a survival play from their athletic department.
Sure.
Right? Like they had to do this. So I think these coaches probably understand that, but it doesn't mean they like it. Like they have to deal with it, and they're going to have to try to get outside the box. I'm sure they've talked to NBA teams about how do you deal with this, but they're just, the NBA, you're not dealing with only some of the teams have, the 4 trips.
Right.
That everybody has all the trips in
It's
the NBA,
equal.
right? Like it's an equal opportunity type thing. But I do, yes, there's no doubt that when those teams make that trip over 4 times over a 2 or 3 month span, it saps you. And I think I do also agree that in order for them to win and have that type of success, they're going to have a team that is overwhelmingly better from a talent perspective. And, for this year, I like Oregon's base. That's a good place to start with Shellstat. Unfortunately, he got, he broke his wrist or hand or whatever, finger. But with Biddle and Kwame Evans, like that's a good base. Now, their transfers will have to play well. Washington, fascinating. It's essentially USC's backcourt, who are both Desmond Claude and Wesley Yates are a problem. And then the kid from Turkey is supposed to be really, really good. I think Danny Sprinkle, Washington will be better this year. I don't doubt that.
Well, they have to be.
And then, not a great year one, but a tough situation, right? So, and then USC, like they have, Ronnie Rice, good player. Chad Baker-Mazara, a little volatile, but good player. Yeah, like winners is the perfect way to put it. So, I agree that Mick, he does let you know. he lets you know where you stand and what he thinks on issues, but it is what it is, really.
The other thing he said today that I thought was interesting, I hadn't really thought about this as much, but you mentioned talking to NBA people, and he said they did that, but he also said the thing you got to keep in mind is the NBA doesn't have to deal with guys going to classes. And he said, particularly with them, because they're on a quarter system, they would have guys taking finals on the flight to the Big Ten tournament. Wow. They had no choice. So he said not only did they have to bring their academic people, they had to bring proctors to administer the exams on the flight. I feel, I mean, you know, nobody's got to feel sorry for Mick Cronin. He's making a good living. He's at one of the jewel jobs in the sport. But I do feel a little sympathy for that when I hear him talk about that.
Well, I think also, Rod, you'd feel sympathy because that's not the job that he necessarily took. Right.
That's true. Too.
That's where I would say
for sure. Yeah.
He didn't know, you know, or maybe he had an inkling. I have no idea, but they were in the Pac-12. You know, their travel was substantially easier. Now, I think that I have to assume they're flying more private now. If you recall, 5 years ago, there was this huge thing that UCLA was flying commercial. Like, can you imagine just like Jordan Farmar, like in the seat next to you? Like, hey, that's Russell Westbrook. He might be a good NBA player one day. You know,
I'm not going to give him my aisle seat for that guy. Yeah, right.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, it's very well, and you know, I think there's definitely a disadvantage. I guess I didn't look the numbers for teams traveling west, but obviously you just travel west one time, which is a huge difference. So Michigan State went to Big Ten country, Southern California, got wiped out by USC and UCLA, and next year
at LA. And
we were there.
Saw MSU play their flattest game of the season against USC.
Yeah.
You know, so if that happens on one trip, what happens when you're on trip 3 or 4?
No doubt. No doubt.
Yeah.
And like, you know, if you're UCLA or any of those schools, because you're all on the Pacific Coast and you got the trip of Maryland Rutgers. It's a 6-hour flight with 3-hour time. I mean, that's a long way to go.
Yeah. Well, and we've talked about it before. You know, going LA to Spokane, it's still a long ways, but it's at least you're staying within or Seattle, I should say. You're staying within the same time zone, which is a huge difference.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. That's not as big a deal. All right. So broadening its scope a little bit here, let's talk about the NCAA tournament and this insistence on having every other team. Not only would we have Robbie Hummel on every night, but we'd have to have NCAA tournament games that begin sometime in February in order to get through the brackets. They want to expand this to, I don't know how many teams, like 68, 72.
I think it was 76, correct?
76.
76 now? I don't know that I don't know what the right number is. You know, I think the TV executives seem to think that what they have now is what they want. I don't think they want more. At least that's been my impression in the past. What's your feeling? I mean, do we need to see more, you know, like bottom of the pack Big 12 teams play bottom of the pack
teams that won like 6 games in the league just make the NCAA tournament. You know, I think the NCAA tournament felt like such an incredible achievement because it was hard to make. You know, like that as a player, I felt that because it's like, you know, not everybody gets to go. It was an achievement to get there. Maybe not for Tom Izzo because he goes every year. But
maybe now he won't have to worry about it. They'll go forever.
Yeah, that's right. It will never be challenged for him. But I will say, if the format was to get more of the Indiana States of the world from 2 years ago involved, you guys saw that team play at Michigan State. I did the game.
Really good.
Yeah.
I'm for that. You know, because they just didn't win their single elimination tournament that would have punched their ticket. They were an NCAA tournament team, but they didn't have the resume because who would play them? You know, like I'm sure if they could have played in like the Maui Invitational that year and gotten 4 or 5 cracks at high majors, they probably would have picked some of them off because they almost got Michigan State in East Lansing. But I think we all know where this is going because of the power players in college sports. This is for more high majors. Now, the thing, if you are adding 8 teams, you could sell me on a Tuesday and Wednesday. You're making that essentially 8 teams are going to make it. That's 4 games. You're spreading in an essential 11 or noon tip on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then like a 2 o'clock. So basically, you're saying our play-ins will be all day, which I honestly wouldn't hate because I love Thursday and Friday, you know, like now, do I think those teams are necessarily deserving that are high made like Indiana last year? No, they to me did not earn their they're positioned to play for the NCAA tournament. Nebraska, obviously they didn't make the Big Ten tournament, but they didn't do enough in league play after having a good non-conference to make the NCAA tournament. I think that those teams will start to get in. I don't hate the new format because I do think that games all day are kind of fun, but I do hate the fact that we're going to reward high major teams that just didn't get it done with an NCAA tournament spot.
Yeah. I also would rather not have the 16 seeds play each other on those days. Yeah. I mean, just have all the at-larges play each other for those middle seeds.
Yeah, have like the 2 11 seeds play each other, or have like a high major versus mid major, like let's do a 14 versus 3. Like I just think there's a lot of cool things you could do. The 16 versus 16 is not the most intriguing. We have gotten some good games, but I'm with you. I'd rather see some other matchups.
And you just feel like, the kids who play in those programs that end up as 16 seeds, getting their chance to play a 1 seed was always, before we had the play-in, that was the one, okay, you earned this one shot for your career. And you take that away from half of them now because we're forcing them to play this elimination game just to get in.
Well, and they won their conference tournament. Right. So like to me, have earned their way into the field. They have done what they needed to do. I agree.
Well, we know 16 seeds never win, though.
Just unfortunately for Virginia and Purdue, sometimes they do. That was a tough one. That was a tough pill to swallow for all of us, right?
My son's at Purdue now, so he has I don't know how much engineering he's learned, but he's definitely learned to hate Indiana. That's why.
All right. Is he enjoying his experience there?
He is, although he's in Indianapolis. That's their new campus. They split up IUPUI, right. So he's learning how to build race cars. So
all right,
no better place than Indianapolis. Absolutely. Right. So I guess with the tournament getting bigger and these worse, do you see how many teams do you see? I guess this year, because I don't think they'd have changed the tournament this year, right? Is this talk for
this year?
Do you think the league is going to be better? I mean, when we've gone through these previews, my impression is going through these teams that the Big Ten, it looks like it's going to be a lot harder than it was last year. Yeah. And maybe that's just my general it's maybe not incorrect, but I feel like, we know Purdue's going to be quite a bit better, and they were already pretty good last year. I think Michigan State's actually going to be better, but they're going to have to be a whole lot better in order to be competitive at the top of the league, I think.
Sure. Yeah, I think Illinois is an NCAA tournament team. Indiana, a lot of new faces. They can really shoot. I don't know how well they'll defend, especially interior-wise, but they could be a tournament team. Iowa's intriguing. I think just because their coach comes with a pedigree that he comes with, and Bennett Sturtz will be as good of a point guard as outside of Braden Smith as anybody, some of the continuity that he's got. Obviously, Michigan has talent. Michigan State has talent. Nebraska, I like the fact that Rink Mast is back, but losing Bryce Williams is a big, big deal. And I just don't know who kind of fills that void as their go-to guy. Ohio State, Bruce Thornton has got to make the tournament one of these years, right? Like he's put up incredible statistical numbers. Like you look at his synergy stuff, everything is excellent. His percentages on pull-ups, threes, shots off the bounce, whatever, at the rim, he statistically has been phenomenal. But the one thing that's eluded him, and certainly with John Mobley and Devin Royal, like that's a good place to start. So I like Ohio State. We talked about Oregon's core. Penn State, they have a lot of new guys. Not sure on them. Purdue is Purdue. UCLA will be really good. USC, a lot of talent. Washington, I think, could be a tournament team. And Wisconsin, I think, is a tournament team. So, there's a lot of – that's the thing, though. When I was playing in the Big Ten, there was get-right games. There was somebody that was 2-16 in the league. And you're like, as long as we are semi-locked in, like, we should win this game. We can get right in this game. There is nobody that's bad anymore. The league has become so competitive top to bottom. The atmospheres are great. They always have been. But I just think the talent level at the bottom has risen because of NIL and just the way that the college landscape is now.
Yeah, certainly. Getting players from mid-majors and things like that, for sure. More talent.
I guess we've touched on, turning to MSU specifically, we've touched on this a little bit already, but we talked to you before the season, not after. What did you make of the season that Michigan State had last year? And do you think they'll have a chance to have similar success, even with some of the personnel losses that they took from that group last year?
Yeah, I loved watching their team. I thought the cohesion, you could see it. They played for each other, and they played a nostalgic brand of Michigan State basketball. They rebounded the ball, they ran, they defended like crazy. And just to see kind of the different guys that would step up, on any given night. And then to see also the way that Jace Richardson became this first round pick, just his maturation and, he is a great kid. Just from being around him to get to kind of see him take being the sixth man and then just to grow out of it essentially. And eventually it's like, well, we have to start him. He's killing every game. I was really bummed to see Trey Holloman transfer because I think that's the type of player with, the Michigan kind of shoving match and the half court shot at Maryland. He's a guy that should be able to come back to Lansing, Michigan or East Lansing, Michigan. And every time he steps in a bar, somebody buys him a drink. He was beloved. And look, I get that there's maybe more money elsewhere, but speaking from experience, from a Purdue perspective, there are people in the athletic department, alumni that have looked out for me and helped me in ways that I can't even begin to explain. And there is a real value. Now, does that mean you should turn down $1 million versus $200,000? I don't know. But there is a value in sticking through it. And just from the moments that he had at Michigan State and the way the fans looked at him, he's not as good a player as Kalen Lucas. He's not as good a player as Cassius Winston, but he's got some moments that are pretty high level in Michigan State. I don't know if lore is the right word, but I just thought, man, stay around and let this place love you for the next 50 years of your life. I was bummed to see that. But from their team perspective, I thought they played with joy. They had to be awesome for Tom Izzo to coach. It seemed like he, every time I was around him, that's the vibe you got. And the unfortunate thing was they just ran into an Auburn team that was incredibly talented, and they gave them all they wanted.
Yeah.
When you look at this team, having lost Jace, having lost Trey Holloman, having lost Jaden Akins, what do you expect to see, I guess, at this point? Do you think they can continue to do those things that you talked about as kind of a return to form? Yeah,
I think those things, yes. There is no reason that this group can't rebound the ball like that or defend like that. And certainly I think they need to run like that. And I think a healthy offseason of Jeremy Fears is a good thing in that regard. My concern, and I will say this, I have not seen the transfers play. So Trey Fort, I have not seen. I obviously haven't seen the freshman Cam Ward, Jordan Scott. Mm-hmm. I've seen Kurtang a little bit in shoot-arounds. I know Jesse McCullough is going to get some run here. And then the point guard from Miami.
Divine Uchukwu.
That's another one of the pronunciation ones.
That's another one, yeah.
Right, I just worry without Jaden and Jace, what does the half-court offense look like? I know Coach Izzo has run some of these sets since I played and since Shannon Brown played. So I know they're going to run some stuff and manufacture offense, but I think early on especially, it would go a long way for this team to be elite in transition. So I think that will be emphasized as it always is, or maybe even more than it always is. I think that with the coaching they have and the roster they have, Cohen Carr is fascinating to me if he plays more at the 3 versus the 4. How much do people go under on him? Can he make them pay for that when they do? I love the way he scored last year. He figured out how to utilize being a freak athlete and turn that into offensive rebound putbacks, big time cutting, getting dribble drives with already ahead of steam going downhill. That's great. But when you come off a screen, or if you're playing at the 3 instead of the 4, it's just, is it going to be, we go under and under and under and under? And that, that's a hard way to play. So I'm curious to see kind of what his offseason has looked like. Izzo said today he's shooting free throws better and his jumper's better, but he's not where he wants to be yet. So, but I love Cohen Carr is otherworldly, in terms of his athleticism in the open floor. Man, that dude, he truly is. It sounds like hyperbole, but he's one of the best dunkers on the planet right now, if not the best. His athleticism is off the charts.
That's a good question, because we interviewed Jace before last season, but he had been practicing all summer. And we asked him, is he a better dunker than your dad? And he said yes, without a doubt. And his dad has confirmed that as well. I still struggle with that a little bit, just because I remember in-game dunks that Jason Richardson had that were off the charts, but it's close. If you
look at Cohen's, they are too, man. Like, you watch a highlight tape of him, and it's like, my God, what it would be like.
Have you ever seen anybody in at least in Big Ten play that you thought was better?
What was the Rodney? He's not better than Cohen Carr, but the kid from Minnesota, Minneapolis kid.
Oh, I know who you're talking
Rodney, about. God, I'm getting old.
Yeah.
I can't remember these guys.
Welcome to our world. No
Rodney,
kidding.
God, what was his last name? He was an elite dunker. He had some dunks. Rodney Williams.
Yep.
Rodney Williams. He was great. I don't recall anybody like Cohen Carr ever in the Big Ten. And I've been watching heavily since like 1996.
Speaking of which, so you grew up in Indiana, Valparaiso, right?
Yep.
I think when we try and talk about Indiana, and especially Indiana basketball, and not Indiana Hoosiers, we're talking about just Indiana basketball, I think it's really hard for us in Michigan to really appreciate what it's like. Give us a feel for what it's like, what basketball means in like high school, because, we see the things on Texas football and things like that. Rod will talk about going to see these huge arenas in Indianapolis that are small high schools.
When I've gone to EYBL and they have some of the satellite games for like 15 and under teams, you got to go to a high school 20 minutes away.
Sure.
And it's like a 6,000 capacity gym. Be one of the 5 biggest gyms in our state. It's maybe not even the top 20.
Yeah, right. No, that's true. Like, my high school gym sat 5,000, I think, and that probably puts it like 20th. The thing is, I grew up. Valparaiso was a pretty proud basketball community. Roger Harden was Mr. Basketball in the '80s. Played at Kentucky. Bryce Drew played at Valpo. Mr. Basketball played at Valpo, and into the NBA. And it's a program that won a lot, whether they had stars like that or not. So, like, growing up, going to the high school basketball games on a Friday or Saturday night was really what everybody did. I'd see all my friends from school there. The girls program was great. The boys program was great. And growing up, like, I had probably 3 goals from the time that I would say I was going to Bob Punter was my high school coach. He had the Bob Punter basketball camp. So from the time I started there in like probably first grade, maybe kindergarten, my goals were to play on the varsity at Valpo High School, to be an Indiana All-Star, and to play in the NCAA tournament. And like, those were the 3 things that I wanted as bad as anything in the world. And, the crazy thing is, you mentioned the stadium and just the gyms and how many people, the capacity that these crowds can get to. My last high school game was against Etwan Moore, my freshman roommate, an AAU teammate from SYF. And we played in front of 8,500 people at Michigan City High School, which is probably like the 3rd or 4th biggest gym in Indiana, but standing room only. We ended up losing the game, unfortunately. They beat Eric Gordon in the state championship, which was a heck of a game. And Etwan actually has never mentioned it. He's never brought it. Like, think about friends that like go way back, how you razz them, and like, man, if I'd won that game, he definitely would have heard about it at least a couple of times. He's never brought it up. He's never once brought it up. But to play in a high school game of that magnitude, it's like an Elite 8 game, and they've got K'Wan Short, who plays 10 years in the NFL. They had Angel Garcia, who's going to Memphis to play for John Calipari, and they have Etwan, who obviously had a great career at Purdue and then a great career in the NBA. That atmosphere, when we ran out there, it was like playing in a Big Ten game, honestly. I mean, like, the crowd was insane. So then when you get to school, and we were lucky too, the class of 07, Michigan State had a great team, but just in the state of Indiana, our Indiana All-Star team was Eric Gordon, Jeff Teague, myself, Scott Martin, who went to Purdue with us, Etwan Moore, Jawan Johnson, Matt Howard, and then a bunch of like mid-major players, Zach Hahn, Butler, Ben Botts, IPFW. They had Brian Bushi, went to Valpo. Like, the team was stacked. Gary McGee doesn't make the team. Gary's my AU teammate. Dyrese Gary doesn't make the team. Those guys were good college players. And then you expand that nationally. The top 10 of the class of 07 is insane. I mean, you're talking Michael Beasley, Eric Gordon, OJ Mayo, Derrick Rose, Kevin Love, Kyle Singler, James Harden, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan. So when we got to college and Michigan State, think about their class. I mean, Chris Allen, Kalen Lucas, Darrell Summers, good players. And they played together with the family. But the class nationally was so stacked that when we got to college, and granted, the Big Ten had a massive departure of like Illinois has turned over the Darren Williams, D. Brown, James Augustine team. Ohio State has turned over the Conley, Oden, Daquan Cook teams. Wisconsin loses, God, I'm losing my mind. What was Orlando Tucker? And they were still good. They were the best team in the league. But like there had been a departure of superstars that kind of opened the door for us. But with that being said, our class was stacked. Like Kalen Lucas is an absolute stud. In any other class, what do you think he was ranked? Like 35th, 40th? He
was not a McDonald's All-American, so yeah.
He's a McDonald's All-American most years. That dude, his burst was stupid. He was so good.
Yeah, and that's it. It's funny you mention that because we talk about that frequently when we get into the recruiting stuff. I don't think enough fans realize being the number 20 guy in a class does not necessarily mean the same thing year to year.
No
you can have years like yours where it's like, hey, number 40 is equivalent to number 20 most years, and then you can go the other way as well.
Yeah. Well, think about if you've guarded Michael Beasley, and then you're going to go and guard like an average small forward wherever, you're probably like, well, Michael Beasley is probably better than him, even as a senior in high school. Same with Eric Gordon, same with OJ Mayo. Like those guys were so high level and mature. Like OJ played at ABCD camp as an 8th grader. Think about that.
I remember the hype around him.
Yeah, no, it was insane.
So you're saying you think that had a lot, because you guys, Eric and I were talking right before you came on with us about how the last few years Gene Katie was at Purdue, the program had slipped from where it had historically been. And then it seems to me like as soon as your class got there, what was your record? Did you guys had a winning season when you were freshmen, right?
Yeah, we were 15-3 in the league and beat Wisconsin twice.
There you go.
And nobody else beat them.
It was immediate. So do you think that had a lot to do with it, that your class was so good and you had been prepared so well by playing against all this talent in AAU and even in high school games?
Yes.
That once you got to the Big Ten, it's another guy.
Yeah, I didn't think that the jump wasn't, it was certainly like the physicality was different. Like you go up against Michigan State's a great example. You go up their front line is Goran Suton, Drew Namick, Raymar Morgan. That's physical. that will bring a physicality that you did not see. I don't care whether you're playing against the McDonald's All-American team of 07. The weight room hours that those dudes had logged, their physicality is going to be different. But like I said, I did think that the league turned over. I think we only got like 5 or 6 teams in the tournament that year. It wasn't exactly a banner. Now, you look ahead to the next 2 years. The year that Michigan State went to the Final Four in 2009, 2010 in Indy, that's the year the league was stacked because Evan Turner is doing his thing at Ohio State. Our team is great. Michigan State's team is great. And there was 3 teams in the league that year that were awesome. There is no doubt about that. But I do think our continuity of playing AAU together, Etwan, myself, and Scott Martin were all AAU teammates. And then we knew Jawan from the junior and senior All-Stars and played against him in AAU. And then Keaton Grant and Chris Kramer were really good sophomores that were, good players that fit their spots perfectly. And then we had a couple upperclassmen that played. But we started in some games 4 freshmen and a sophomore. So the fact that, really, if we don't lose in overtime at Ohio State, we tie for the Big Ten. If Brian Butch, every time I see him, I just am like, why did you bank that 3 in at Indiana? At the time, it was good because Indiana was as talented as anybody, with Sampson's team, with Eric Gordon and DJ White and, those guys. We only played Indiana once that year, which stunk with the unbalanced schedule. But if the Sampson firing doesn't happen, that implosion might not be what it was. They were really good. They had a lot of time.
I guess that's a follow-up I have with talking about the state of Indiana, though. This is something that I end up having discussions with. I'm getting into my later 50s. So for me, Indiana basketball in my mind is still, in a way, Bob Knight and the candy stripe pants and winning the league every other year.
Sure.
Like, that's what it is. And basketball means so much to that state that whenever I hear people talk, and you hear it frequently, especially from younger people, say, well, Indiana's not a great job anymore. I mean, my perception is I don't care what's happened the last 20 years. If you got the right guy in that job, it comes back in a heartbeat, and it's one of the elite jobs in America. If for no other reason than it means so much.
Sure.
Do you think that? You're coming at it from an interesting perspective. Because
well, I think, yeah, I think also just the stark resources that they have at Indiana are something that, no question, there's a passion about it, but there's also the fact that you've got a couple people that are alums that have a lot of money. And with a lot of money, you can get a lot of good players.
Yeah.
So I do think, they spent money in a big way the last 2 years. It was just that their roster construction, I thought they were playing big in the first year because they had Race Thompson and Trace Jackson Davis. But then it was proven that they just wanted to do that because they went out and they got Khalil Ware and they got, they had Malik Renew, and, when that changed, they got Umar Ballo. So I think, yes, the passion is there, but there are people with pockets that this is what matters in college athletics these days. There's people that are willing to put the money down that care a lot. I think it's not a surprise to me that their football team has gotten a lot better. Now, granted, it helps that you hire a coach that comes in, talks big game, lights the world on fire, and brings a lot of his guys. But I also, just from hearing through the grapevine, is that Indiana has not been bashful to spend on their football team either. So I think when you combine the tradition, the resources, the facilities, and then on top of that, the money, yes, that job could be a monster at any time. And we'll see what Darren DeVries has.
What do you think of that hire?
I can't say I've seen him a ton. I know he wants to shoot a bunch of threes. I know that he certainly is going to play positional basketball of getting skilled guys. I think the big kid Reed, I think it's Reed Bailey from Davidson, is 6'10", dribble, pass, and shoot, can make plays at the elbow. But I'd be lying if I said that I had watched a ton of West Virginia from last year or Drake before that. But just from talking to some people, they feel like he's a guy that can come in and he's a ball coach. He can turn this thing around and win.
Yeah, and his son is very, very good. He's actually it'd be interesting to see how he does this year too. We're in the midst of we're almost done now at this point with our Big Ten previews. We start sometime because now they're 18 teams, so we have to start pretty much after the season ends and to get all our 18 previews.
It's a lot of weeks.
Right. I think we're down. And I miscalculated the schedule. So I think we're down to 3 shows a week now, just because I think the exhibition game for Michigan State's a week earlier than normal. So anyway, it forces it's a lot of problems, but the point is every year, Rod accurately predicts the final Big Ten standings 1 through 18. Yeah. That's of course the joke because he's always last in the competition that we have with our fans.
Really?
Pretty much.
You know what they say about people who think they know more than everybody else and how that turns out. Yeah.
It's not easy, especially now.
No,
The funny thing is that these networks, whoever you work for in the spring, let's say in May or June, will call you and be like, hey, can we have a Zoom call? And we want to talk about who's what in the Big Ten, and because they want to prepare for the draft. I wish that they would be more transparent about I think the draft is fascinating. The trades that go on between networks of draft picks and just the way the games get selected for these networks. And the last 2 years I've been like, what am I going to tell you? I can say, well, this transfers from here and he averaged this many points a game, but I don't know. I don't know what they're going to look like. I know what Purdue's going to look like because everybody's back. But other than that, Michigan State has good continuity, but there's questions about them offensively. It's kind of comical that they even ask because, okay, I'd be an expert on Big Ten basketball, I suppose, because I watch so much of it, but I can't watch these guys till the games start in November. So what am I going to tell you in May? It's impossible.
So right now you're saying you can't predict 1 through 18.
I would feel good about picking Purdue at 1. And after that, I don't feel good about anybody, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the Rod's excuse every year. Usually, actually, the last couple of years, Rod has predicted Indiana to have really good seasons, but then also to respond by, he said he predicted them number 1, but that they would not finish first.
That was a few years ago.
That was 2 years ago.
Number
Yeah.
1 because it seemed on paper like it was the obvious choice. That was Trace Jackson Davis's senior year, heading into that. But I also said I didn't trust them at all, and I didn't think they'd end up with it, even though I'm
I think that maybe your assessment was spot on.
Proved out to be okay.
It was both spot on and 100%
Spot on
wrong.
and wrong. Yeah, that's impressive to be both.
Yeah, and he's also prone to be fooled by Ohio State, which has been a team that has been one that you think is going to be a lot better than they are, and they just tend to kind of underperform.
Yeah,
and I don't.
Yeah, last year they just
coaches.
Some baffling.
Well,
yeah,
and you mentioned the reason why for me. Every year I look at Bruce Thornton and I think, how can a team with a point guard this good not be an NCAA tournament team? And then and he plays well, but they still figure out how to miss it.
I know. It's honestly crazy to see how impressively efficient his numbers are year in and year out. And you just think, if your point guard play is good, that goes a long way in college basketball. Yeah. Now they've had, like their front court last year was a major issue. Like Aaron Bradshaw and Chuck Stewart were just not good enough. And but you think about like Devin Royal and then John Mobley, defensively not great, but big time shot maker, was prone to some cold nights, but also just he could detonate, for 5, 6, 7 threes. But I guess in fairness to Bruce, some of the pieces around him, especially front court wise last year, not great.
Yeah.
But like Micah Parrish is a good player, they had a lot of good pieces. So I'm interested to see with some of the guys they brought in this year, if they, Jake Diebler I talked to him a little bit today. I've known Jake forever just because he was at Valpo when I was in high school. We'd go up there and play at VU because there was good pickup games there with the college guys. And, which probably was a violation, but there's no rules anymore, so we can be honest about what we were doing. And he was really optimistic and really upbeat and really likes his team, which every coach does. But he had good things to say.
No, like I said, we went through the previews, and outside of maybe 2 or 3 teams, you're like, any of these teams could be really pretty good. They all seem good, but I mean, someone's going to finish last and someone's going to finish first, or maybe tied for first. But for the most part, you're going to be somewhere in there, and it just, if the league is really good, I guess we'll see. It'll be interesting to see what happens in non-conference, because that's obviously where you get really the seeding, the amount of seeds that come out of the conference really come from, right? If you have a wildly successful offseason as a conference, that's what the SEC did last year, and that's what the Big Ten did not do. So, yeah,
no, it should be fun. It's right around the corner. It's crazy.
Yep.
It's great.
I think we'll probably wrap it up there. Again, just a reminder to viewers, if you want to get some great Spartan apparel. And they currently Nudge Printing at nudgeprinting.com, 20% off. You mentioned Final Four. Just type it in one word at checkout. They do not currently have Purdue stuff. They do have Indiana, I hate to say, and Minnesota and Iowa. I think Gabe and Brittany adding more stuff, but for Michigan State fans, obviously head on over there. You can get our stuff too if you want at the Friends and Family. You can also check out the Squeegee Squad Grand Rapids if you need your windows cleaned, your house washed, 15% off. Just mention Final Four, and you get that at our support page at tffinots.com/support. Well, Robbie Hummel, thanks again.
Before we close up,
go right ahead.
A really good Michigan State story that I.
Oh, please. Absolutely.
My second year in the NBA, we were playing the Memphis Grizzlies, and I just thought of this, and I was like, "Well, this is a Michigan State podcast, so this is a really good time to share this." We're playing the Grizzlies. Obviously, Zach Randolph is a big time problem for us. We're going to have some issues guarding him, especially because for context, my first year in the NBA was Kevin Love's last year. So our team actually that year was good. We had Kevin Martin, Corey Brewer, Nikola Pekovic, Chase Budinger, JJ Barea. We kind of underachieved, and the West was stacked. We trade Kevin for Andrew Wiggins, Zach LaVine, and Anthony Bennett. And my second year, we're terrible. So we're playing in Memphis. And before the game, Zach Randolph comes up to me. And I'd never met Zach Randolph ever. He comes up to me, and he must have, the NBA, a lot of these teams will throw like the one sheet of like the rosters from of both teams and like coaching staffs on like the chairs. So like maybe like a flip card. He must have just looked at it and been scanning through and seen that I was from Valparaiso, Indiana. So Zach Randolph comes over to me. He goes, "Robbie, you're from Valparaiso?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I'm like, literally, I was just like shooting. I'm like, why is Zach Randolph so out of nowhere, right? And he was like, man, that's what's up. Good luck tonight. And I was like, dang, Zach Randolph is an awesome dude. I get thrown in the game. Zach Randolph proceeded to abuse me. It was literally not that he needed to, but I was like, dude, I think this guy set me up of like, I'm going to, in case he gets in, I'm just going to say something nice to him. And then I'm going to literally destroy this guy, which he did. So I always thought it was so funny. It was like, man, you're from Valpo? That's what's up. It's just so random. So random. But he was obviously
my question is, why were you guarding Zach Randolph?
Yeah, I was trying to figure that out.
They had Marcus All. I played a lot of the 4 in the NBA.
Okay.
I played the 3 too, but when they go big, I'd have to guard him. And I'll never forget my rookie year. There was a time where Kevin Love was blocking out, and he was like, you got to help me with this, dude. You need to pinch. You got to pinch on this block out. And think about Kevin. I mean, he's one of the elite rebounders in the league.
Yeah.
But Zach Randolph is as strong as any person that you would ever see play basketball.
Yeah. That's great.
All right. Well, we'll absolutely leave it there. Thanks again, Robbie. Best of luck to you with your 17 networks you're working for. We'll see you on TV in the studio. So until next time, the Final Four is on the schedule. Go Green.